Bill woke to the sound of voices drifting in from the market street, mixed with the sharp barking of dogs somewhere in the settlement. For the first time in a long while, he rose feeling rested, almost energized. He had rented a small room in a modest lodge at the center of town. He dressed quickly, strapped on his gear, and stepped outside. Frost still clung to the shaded corners of the buildings, but sunlight was already spreading across the settlement, turning the rooftops pale gold. The black Mustang lifted its head when it heard him approach. Bill brushed its neck and whispered a quiet greeting before giving it some feed from a small sack.
Easy, boy.
The horse chewed steadily, warm breath rising in soft clouds. The day was cold but bright, the sky clear and blue. It felt like the right kind of morning to begin something new. Before leaving the settlement, Bill stopped by a row of market stalls. A trapper was selling iron traps of different sizes, and Bill picked out several sturdy ones. At the next stall, he bought a hand axe, small but heavy enough to split frozen wood, and a few other small necessities he knew he would need in the mountains. With the last of his errands done, he tightened the straps on his pack, mounted the Mustang, and guided it toward the path leading out of town. The noises of the settlement began to fade behind him, replaced by the distant quiet of the wild.
Come on, boy.
Betting on forgetting all the troubles that
Easy.
you. The trail was wide and narrow. The eagle or the sparrow showed the path he was
Good
to
boy.
follow as it flew. A mountain man's a
Whoa,
lonely man, and he needs
easy.
a lot of hand. It ought to have been different, but you oftentimes will find that the story doesn't always go the way you had it in mind.
Bill enjoyed the wilderness and the clean, sharp air, proud of himself for turning a new page in life. Bill knew the beginning would be brutal, but he also knew he was finally walking a path he chose himself. No more army, no more orders, no one telling him where to stand or where to go. Just him, his horse, and the Winchester he paid a high price for. Too weak for a serious bear, but reliable for smaller game. The Hawken he wanted remained only a dream, at least for now. He rode into the mountains and wide forests as the day began to dim. The temperature dropped, and the sky slowly shifted from blue to a heavy leaden gray. When he spotted a cluster of fallen pines, he stopped his horse and stepped down. This would be his camp for the night. It wasn't ideal, but in the wilderness, little ever is. He cleared the ground of needles, gathering small dry twigs, grass, and leaves. While working, his eye caught a pale strip of white bark, a birch tree. That pleased him more than he'd admit. He pulled out his knife and carefully shaved it, layer by layer, making fine, light shavings. Birch always burned well, full of natural resin and quick to take a spark. When the fire finally flared to life, Bill felt his shoulders loosen for the first time since morning. Then he began building a shelter. He raised the fallen pines slightly off the ground and arranged them as a base, then constructed a roof and walls over them. Everything was covered with dense pine branches to hold in warmth and serve as insulation against the fast approaching night. When the fire grew into a broad, steady flame, he took the shovel he had bought at the market and began transferring hot coals into a small pit he had dug. Once he layered the coals thickly, he covered them with a thin layer of earth, just enough to let the heat breathe, but stay trapped. Over that, he placed the deer hides he had bought. It would keep him warm. Before wrapping himself in his wool blanket, he brewed pine needle tea in a small metal pot. The warm scent of resin lifted into the air. He sat by the fire, sipping tea and chewing dry meat, listening carefully to the forest. Every sound mattered: the crack of a twig, a distant call, the sharp snap of frozen bark. The forest changed at night. It became something else, more intimate, more dangerous. His rifle rested within arm's reach, his knife at his side. Only then could he relax. The Winchester wasn't the Hawken he wanted, not something that could stand up to a giant bear, but it would do for rabbits, foxes, and anything that could offer him food or fur. The otter pelt, he thought of it often. It was the most expensive thing the trader had, and Bill dreamed that such catches would one day earn him enough to build a proper cabin deep in the woods where no one would look for him. As the fire danced before him, Bill stared into the darkness of the forest. He didn't know what waited out there, but he knew one thing: there was no turning back, and he would do whatever it took to make his dream real. Bill woke with the first light of dawn. He packed his belongings and continued on his journey with his horse. Now he led the animal by the reins.
Easy.
Everywhere he looked, he saw the delicate footprints of a fox, scattered marks of a marten, and near small streams, the prints of geese and ducks. Then he came upon enormous tracks, bear tracks. He froze, his heart pounding. Never in his life had he seen prints so vast, and he could only imagine the size of the creature that had made them. The tracks looked fresh, and without hesitation, he decided to change direction, taking a different path. As he walked with his horse, wildlife was scarce. Only the occasional fox darted through the trees, and flocks of ducks and geese occasionally crossed the narrow valleys above him. Memories of the stories he had heard flooded his mind, reminding him of the river and the places where the most valuable fur, that of the otter, could be found. The next morning, snow began to fall. A creeping panic settled over him,
Come on,
the
boy.
fear that he might not survive the winter gnawing at his resolve. Hours passed as he trudged over the hills, each step heavy with snow and cold, until in the distance he spotted a log cabin, half buried beneath the white blanket. Approaching cautiously, he moved as if every shadow might hide a sudden threat. The door had been broken down. Inside, the cabin was abandoned, thick with cobwebs, and shattered window frames bore witness to a past struggle. Yet there were no bodies, no signs of life beyond the lingering sense of chaos. In the center of the room stood an old stone hearth, long cold. Night approached, and Bill had no choice but to claim this shelter. He immediately set about preparing for the long, freezing night. Clearing snow from around the cabin, he felled a few thin pines, stripped them of branches as best he could, and used the logs to extend the roof outward, creating a makeshift lean-to for his horse. With the boughs, he covered this new overhang, fashioning improvised walls to shield the animal from the wind and snow. Next, he repaired the cabin door. As darkness fell, he lit a fire that quickly warmed the wooden interior. He discovered a makeshift bed and layered his furs and blanket upon it. On a shelf, he found a few half-burned candles, which he lit, casting a soft glow across the cabin. He also noticed a nearly empty bottle of whiskey. He hadn't touched alcohol in months, but allowed himself a single sip. It was a quiet promise to himself. Never again would he drown in drink, only to use it sparingly, for warmth, for comfort, or to cleanse a wound. The cabin contained a rickety table and a chair on the verge of collapse, clearly built by amateur hands long ago. While exploring, his eyes fell on a pair of snowshoes hanging on the wall. Beneath the bed he found gunpowder, laid bullets, and finally an old Hawken rifle, designed for black powder. Joy surged through him. He had always dreamed of owning such a rifle, and now, holding it in his hands, he felt a rush of triumph. His happiness, however, was interrupted by the howl of the wind outside. Opening the door, he was immediately pelted by snow in the eyes. He rushed to check on his horse, already nearly buried in the growing drift. He returned inside to fetch a warm woolen blanket. Carefully, he cleared the snow off the horse, covered it with the blanket, and layered both deer furs over it, hoping to shield it from the bitter cold. Only then did he return inside, settling near the fire. Relief and contentment battled with worry for the animal he depended on. He was overjoyed by the discovery of the rifle, yet he didn't pause to consider why the cabin had been abandoned or who had broken down its door. For now, the warmth of the fire and the shelter of the cabin were enough to keep him safe from the storm that raged outside. In the middle of the night, a violent gust of wind pushed the cabin door slightly ajar, and Bill woke instantly. He dressed in a hurry, pulled his hat onto his head, and stepped outside, anxiety tightening in his chest. Snow had piled high against the entrance, and he struggled to push his way through, but he forced himself onward until he reached his horse. To his relief, the animal was still alive, shivering but standing strong. Bill searched the far side of the small cabin and found an old pot half buried in the snow. He filled it with handfuls of snow, melted it over the fire, and warmed the water until steam rose from its surface. Then he added a pine branch with needles still clinging to it, making a crude but comforting tea. He drank a little to steady himself and gave the rest to the horse, hoping the warmth would help it endure the night. At that moment, the horse felt like his closest friend, and Bill vowed he would protect it for as long as necessary. By morning, the snowfall had finally stopped. Bill carved a path through the drift again and led the horse out from beneath the makeshift shelter. He immediately set to work repairing the lean-to he had thrown together the previous evening. Nearby, the horse used its hooves and nose to clear snow from the ground, nibbling at the buried grass. Bill reinforced the structure, layering it with more pine branches until it was far better insulated. He planned to improve it further when he had the time. After that, he went back inside and continued fixing the cabin door, only then noticing deep scratches from claws and teeth gouged into the wood. A bear had done this, a massive one. The same beast, Bill realized, that had killed the trapper and dragged the body far from the cabin. The thought made his blood run cold. He strengthened the door, secured the windows, and promised himself he would build a sturdier pen for the horse as well, one with log walls and a reinforced gate. He could only hope that the beast was now deep in hibernation, not prowling hungry through the forest. Bill needed to be ready. Later that day, he spotted a calm stretch of river not far from the cabin and decided it was the perfect place to set traps for otters. Around the cabin, he laid out 2 heavy bear traps he had bought from the trapper. He also set smaller snares along logs and bent branches, hoping to catch martens, whose pelts were valuable as well. While placing one of the snares, something gray stirred in the bushes. Bill quietly pulled out his Winchester and took aim. A beautiful fox emerged, its coat a dark, smoky silver. He fired. The animal dropped instantly. Bill hurried over, lifted his prize, and laid the fox across his horse. His first catch, and a lucrative one. Fox fur, especially silver or charcoal gray, fetched a high price. 2 months passed. Bill learned to catch ducks and fish to feed himself. There was little else on the menu. He trapped 14 foxes, 9 otters, and 7 martens, 4 white, 3 brown. He had already prepared the pelts and even crafted a warm fur cap from one of them, something that would protect his ears far better than his old hat. The snow was beginning to melt, spring creeping slowly into the mountains. Yet one thought haunted Bill endlessly. Would the man-eating bear return to its hunting grounds? Was it already awake? Already out there? Bill couldn't know it yet, but he knows they will meet soon.